Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday evening and it's 9 p.m. and it's time for another episode of Friend of a Wounded Heart, hosted by Hope and Action Network. If you're here for the first time, we warmly welcome you. And for those who join us week after week, we so treasure your support and we encourage you to keep coming. Before we begin this evening's exercise, I asked Dawn to say a word of prayer first, please. Dawn, could you just say a word of prayer, please? Okay, so we don't have her. Perhaps she doesn't have a mic. Okay, Akisha, could you say a word of prayer first, please, as we begin?
Sure. Very good evening, everyone. Heavenly Father, Lord, I want to thank you for your blessings, your guidance, and your protection today. Father, I pray that as we go into today's session, you allow us to have a good, informative session, help the presenters and speakers to be able to express themselves clearly so that everybody will understand what we are about to deliver this evening. Bless and keep us, bless those who are here already, and help our session to be a success. Bless the devices that we are using and the platform that we are using this evening. Is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Akisha, how was your day? I hope you had a very good day.
My day was good. I had a good day.
Yes, you look rested for some reason. You look so rested.
Well, I don't have a response for that. I had a long day, but
okay, I understand.
Yes.
Welcome everyone to our session, Friend of a Wounded Heart, July 12th, 2023, and it's our 34th session. Every week we meet here and our aim is to help persons to deal with hurts as well as to help persons in avoiding being hurt. And you know, I was looking at a video today out of Orlando, Florida. And the officers were saying that they had just arrested 6 persons and 4 of them were Disney workers. And they were arrested on several charges that had to do with minors. There was a sting operation, and these persons actually thought that they were talking to 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds, when in fact they were speaking to officers. They had sent pornography to these, supposedly to these children. They had planned to meet them to engage in sexual activity. This evening, our program is really aimed at parents because we want to ensure that as we go into this vacation, the July-August vacation, our children are not left to the wolves. I welcome you all, those who join us from week to week and those who are joining us for the first time. It's good to have you. Our program has been helping persons, and some of them really gathered a great number of viewers, a high number, 80 for one program, 94 for another. And I want to urge you to keep sharing our message from week to week so that persons can be helped. Akisha, as usual, you are my support, my prop. And on Monday evening, quite late, was it Monday evening or was it last night? I can't remember. We were there deciding on the topic and you sent me the topic. So this topic came directly from Akisha's brain. Akisha is my great support, and of course, she's my co-host almost every week or every week. Akisha, welcome. And let's talk to our participants this evening.
Hi, good evening again, everyone. Dr. Wood is here, you know, let's talk about the device. I really need to let you guys know, just in case you're not sure, Dr. Ward is the brainchild of this program, brainchild of Hope and Action Network. And she sits there so quietly sometimes, but I just want you guys to know that, yes, I do play an active part, but it wouldn't be possible without her input and her guidance. So I just want to say, because of the great work you are doing, I have the opportunity to be here this evening and every Wednesday, for a matter of fact. But as we get into this program, Hope and Action Network is the network or the NGO that is really in charge or responsible for this program that you are viewing at this time. At Hope and Action Network, we believe our vision statement is a better society built on strong foundations through the empowerment of everyone. So every week as we go into another topic, each topic, we are really hoping that at the end of the experience, we really do impact you guys so that and empower you guys so that we can fulfill our vision at Hope and Action Network. And because you are here with us, we do hope that you would share our contents, that you will also participate, because by week we have participation, and we thank you for doing so. All right, so just remember, we are here to build a strong foundation through the empowerment of everyone, starting in Trinidad and Tobago. Just in case you would have missed any of the topics, like you would have heard, we are on our 34th session. So happy 34th to Hope and Action Network, a friend of a wounded heart. If you would have missed any session that we would have looked at before, feel free to go on our YouTube channel or Dr. Ward's YouTube channel and Facebook, and you can find all of the different topics that we would have gone through. But I will just give you a recap of the last 5 ones that we dealt with. Last week, we spoke about parental alienation, a very informative topic, one that there were some points that came out there that I didn't even consider to be parental alienation. So check it out. Prior to that, we looked at You Pick a Fine Time to Leave Me Loser. The week before that, Sugar Baby, Have a Heart. Then we looked at To Men with Love and Pepper Sauce Namesake. So those are the last 5 topics we looked at. And today, again, we have a very informative and timely topic that we're going to look at today, and it's called School's Out, Look Out.
School's out, look out. I'm sure our children were anxious to begin their vacation. Of course, the school term is 39 weeks, and they look forward to this long vacation when they will do many of the things that they could not do while school was in progress. I did a calculation of the approximate number of hours that these children would be at home for, and it was quite a large number. And many of our children would be spending most of those hours awake, especially the older ones. And as parents, we have to be particularly cautious about what we do during this period. We have to protect our children. This evening, we have 2 persons who will share information with us to help us to care for our children during the vacation period and always, because we're not simply to use these strategies and information for the vacation period. They will take us, that information will assist us at all times. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you PC Virgil from the Special Victims Unit. PC Virgil is going to be supported this evening by one of our very own, Sharon, one of our members, and she also will share some very useful information with us. And they have asked them to be real, to tell us as it is, because we do not want to cause our children hurt, we do not want to hurt ourselves, and we certainly do not wish to be arrested. So Officer Virgil, school is on vacation. The children are at home. They feel free, they want to have fun, they want to enjoy themselves. And one of the issues, one of the very popular terms nowadays is stranger danger. Stranger danger. My very young granddaughter speaks of stranger danger. And I want you to speak to stranger danger this evening, Officer Virgil. Is there really danger? I mean, we live in a society that is supposed to be friendly. So what is this stranger danger? What is this all about?
Well, thank you, Miss Bob. But before I answer your question, afford me a minute to shed some light as to who we are and what we do.
Certainly.
We are currently attached to the Special Victims Department, but out of that department comes the School Intervention Unit, which comprises of myself and two of my other colleagues, Mr. Mills, who you would have spoken to prior. And the reason for its incarnation was simply because of the issues that you have just mentioned and the myriad of others that probably we're going to be discussing here today. And hopefully at the end of it, you know, some clarity, some empowerment, as your colleague would have mentioned before, is had. So as we talk about stranger danger, we have to understand that the world is changing. Even Trinidad and Tobago, that's supposed to be a relatively close-knit, especially Tobago, supposed to be a relatively close-knit society, is not as friendly or as least in the time that we're living in. So we have to be a bit more aware as to whom is within our space. And children naturally are curious, they're naturally friendly, they're naturally honest, and especially in relation to people. You know, because in truth and in fact, you know, we as parents would literally put children in a school to more or less fend for themselves, to find new friends, etc., etc. But we still have to teach them the fundamentals of what kind of interactions is permissible and what is not. And we find ourselves a lot of the times that children are unaware as to what boundaries are to be set for the kinds of interactions we're supposed to have with people that is outside of our safe circle and the other environments we may encounter. And those environments can be as diverse from supermarket to school, to home, to church. Yeah, all these environments carries with it its own unique dynamic, own unique interactions, and children need to be aware as to what is permissible and what isn't. So we could start the conversation from there.
You mentioned a number of places, officer. A number of places, but in church, I'm supposed to be comfortable. At school, I'm supposed to be comfortable. And if it's a supermarket close to home, I know the supermarket and I know everyone there. So where does this stranger danger come in, and what are the boundaries to which you referred?
Well, if we have to be honest, because one thing Ms. Bobby mentioned is that you want us to be real and as raw as possible. Yes. The devil goes to church. The devil goes to church. You know, the devil knows the Bible. And if you want to understand how to identify a counterfeit, you don't study counterfeits, you study what is real. So in any environment, you have to understand what is permissible and what is not permissible, right? Because we talk about stranger danger. So the first thing we talk about is awareness or situational awareness as it relates to the environment you're in. So usually any kind of interaction that a child should have, especially for the first time, should always be in the company of their parents. So we could start there, especially in a public place. But prior to that, the conversation should still happen or should occur within the home. So so the conversations that a parent should have with the child should be as such that the child should be aware as to what to look out for, who to look out for, what to do, what not to do, what is allowed and what's not allowed. So this child has an understanding of their boundaries, their personal boundaries, their safe space in which they operate when they're going out into public.
So Sharon, PC Virgil just said that the devil goes to church. Sean, I know that you go to church too. Have you ever seen the devil in church?
That's a hard question. Very difficult. Very difficult. I guess sometimes, in my opinion, sometimes the devil might be so decently dressed and sit next to you or I, or even next to our children, and we would not be able to detect who is the devil. So therefore, as parents, we ought to be very careful who our children associate with, and we ought, as PC Virgil says, we ought to educate them as to who they should speak to, or who they should interact to, and who they should interact with, and who they should not.
And PC Virgil said that the interaction should be in the presence of the parents. You know, sometimes children believe that you are holding them down. You're looking at them too much. You don't trust them, and so on. But PC Virgil said the interaction should be in the company of the parents.
Especially when you're taking the age of the child into account. You know, of course, you would want your child to be afforded certain types of freedoms and certain types of liberties. But remember, the relationship with that parent and the child, the determination at the end of the day resides 100% with their parents. We have experienced and we have seen it where parents have more or less absconded from the responsibility of monitoring by nurturing and guiding because they believe their children to be independent enough to make certain decisions. But a lot of the times, it is where we see well, I don't want to use the word predators, but the opportunity for mischief to happen, whether the child is a perpetrator of the mischief or they're in a situation where they may encounter problems, where they have not been made aware of certain things and the do's and the don'ts about interpersonal interaction with other people, especially as they get older. That is why it is important for them to start from the very beginning, from the earliest stages, you know. So that is why, as Sister Sharon, well, Miss Sharon was talking about, when she said that she can't say for certain. And that is why we train our children to recognize the signs. It's not just about the person, how they are dressed, but how in which they want to speak with you, the kind of conversations they want to have with you. And certain words, certain phrases would trigger a particular kind of response or a particular type of action in terms of what this child does in relation to when they hear, when they see, and when they experience, you know, these types of situations.
We will get back to some of the dangers. Sharon, do you want to say something now?
Yes, I just wanted to add that from early onset, parents are supposed to teach their children that they're not supposed to open the door to strangers. If they are not familiar with that person, do not have any conversation with that person. And as the child gets older, because you remember, you as a parent, you would be teaching a child the do's and the don'ts, as PC Virgil said. So as the child gets older, you, the parent, would have to have that conversation from preschool. You let them know this person is not supposed to pick you up. You allow the teachers to know this person is supposed to pick you up. So they know from early the do's and the don'ts. You're not supposed to go with this person. This person is not your parents. Don't go with the parents. Or this person is not a family member. Don't go with the family member. So from early onset, parents are supposed to teach their children the do's and the don'ts.
Thank you, Sharon.
Even the climax a little bit of what Ms. Sharon was talking about.
Sure.
Because I did allude earlier about the safe circle, the circle of trust, the positions of trust, right? Because even you may have family members or relatives, you know, parents or friends of the parents who does interact with your child or children. But these friends should still be aware as to what type of conversations and interaction that is permissible, because they understand who that trust circle or that circle of trust or that position of trust actually are. Because let's say, for example, you have a daughter who you introduce as your uncle. This person introduced as your aunt or your uncle. And the child is now aware that this person is my aunt or my uncle. But then after you leave the room with the child for a couple of minutes, and the uncle or aunt is saying, hey, I have something over here. Come, let me show you what it is. Don't worry, it's okay. It's uncle so-and-so, it's auntie so-and-so,
Yeah.
right? This child now aware that, yes, you may be related to me, but my mother or my parents would have said to me, I am not allowed to go here or there with anybody unless they come and they ask for my permission first. So the child now will go and say, mommy, auntie is asking me to go so-and-so. Is that okay? And mommy will be like, okay, yes, it's safe.
Yeah.
Daddy will be like, no, it's not safe. You know, depending on the kind of response or the kind of communication. That is why it is emphasized that as early as possible, children are very intuitive, they're very intelligent, but also they're very exposed. You know, they're very, very exposed. So it is very important for that foundation to be built as young as possible. Because I think at the age of 5 years old is when the personalities are now starting to take hold.
Yes.
So you can continue from there, Ms. Bob.
Yes, we're going great. We're going great so far, and I really hope that persons are paying particular attention to what is being said, because we tend sometimes to be too trusting. And Akeisha, please take us through what has been said in the chat so far. Continue.
Friends, they can be quite evil. Somebody else is stating they should also know their parents' contact number or emergency contact. I think that's really important.
Yes.
And do not accept gifts from strangers. I think that's another important point. And on that note, I was in a public space a while ago. There were a lot of small children there, and an adult male. He was walking and he had a bag of apples. And he was eating from the bag of apples. So about 10 apples were in this bag. So he would buy the apple and he would put the core back into the bag. And then he proceeded, after he ate about 2 or 3, he proceeded to share these apples with children without their parents' permission. I mean, I was like, what craziness. A few children had already taken it because, I mean, their parents didn't see when they were given it, and the children, accepted it. And I was like, thank God that the parents actually, stop him, because I don't know if he realized, first of all, you shouldn't give a child, you're a stranger, you shouldn't give a child something without the parents' permission, 1, and 2, I mean, it's not hygienic to put the apples back in the bag and share. So I think it's really important to, allow your children to understand that accepting things from strangers isn't something that they should do, even when you're not present in their space.
Great
Akeisha,
point.
thanks for raising that.
Yes.
Sexual grooming begins by accepting gifts. And parents tonight, I just want to share with you all, as Dr. Ward said, we should be real. Sometimes you might see your child come home with a cell phone. You cannot afford an iPhone 14. Where did child get this iPhone 14 from? A friend gave them. So sometimes again, it might be money. It might be even the person who just give those children the apple, that person could come and pretend to be a friend. And that person might start giving gifts, or sometimes as a parent, you might observe, I have 3 girls, and why is the younger one, he always bring sweetie, chewing gum, chocolate? Yeah. Parents, open your eyes. Sometimes that is how the grooming begins. So we have to be very careful, and we have to look at our children with keen eyes and teach them, do not accept gifts from anyone. If anybody wants to give something to you, talk to mommy or daddy. They shouldn't give your children. Be very careful, because the grooming would come in so many different ways. Every time that you might see the child, you look so pretty, you look so nice. And next thing that sometimes parents might overlook, come and sit down on my lap. No, that's a no. Come and comb my hair, male or female. The perpetrators, they don't have any identity. I am a perpetrator. So male will do it, and even the female. So we have to be very careful of sexual grooming. Because sometimes they might treat this sister, okay, you sit there, and always want this one to hug up and give uncle a kiss. And next time I want to tell parents is that if you realize every time uncle come, this child always want to go in the bedroom or always want to go in the bathroom or always make themselves scarce, do some investigation. Start looking. And parents, you all should be the best investigator with your children. So that is something that I just want to add to the mix.
And one thing I would continue to add to that, Ms. Sharon, is that even the Bible says, be sober, be vigilant. We realize a lot of the times parents don't, as Ms. Winchester would have said, do not investigate. They have become so far accepting of things that they would see and observe, but do not have a question, don't ask a question, don't even have a conversation, because you talk about the same gifts. Because one thing we do encourage, it doesn't matter how old the child is, from primary all the way to secondary, is that when the child comes home from school, what is the conversation like? Do you even have a conversation about the child, about how your day went? Because even a child as young as 5 years old, 4 years old, you could have a conversation with them just to see how they go. And you believe in me, children have a tendency to be very, very honest in terms, especially when they're young, they're very, very honest about how their days went. Because even the same incident with the apple, they'll be like, you know, I was playing on the playground, and then this man come and give me an apple, and the apple tastes good, and then I eat it, and I share it with my friends. And then you as a parent like, oh, okay. But it's your response is what you should be making close note of. Not to raise an alarm, to frighten the child, say, oh my gosh, why you take the apple for? Who tell you to do that? I teach you to do that. No, quietly observe, listen, don't react, respond. And your response should be in the form of when you now have all the information, you take that information to the school, have a conversation with the teacher, let the teacher that my child told me this occurred around this particular time, where a man who had apples fitting this description would have handed my child some apples to eat. I would like you all to investigate that, or better yet, see to it that nobody, aside from the child's friends or a teacher, remember going back to the same trust circle, the same circle of trust, the same positions of trust, that nobody outside of that circle does anything, gives anything. And if there's a situation where anybody outside of that has to do any kind of interaction with the child, it has to come through me, the parent. Right? It is very, very easy because we deal with these reports all the time. We deal with situations like this all the time. Even recently, in high school, these children are bringing home money that they can't account for. They're bringing home cell phones that they can't account for. And when we do an investigation to learn that, they are engaged in activities unbeknownst to the parents. And you know what it boils down to? When the child comes home, the child goes in their room, they do their thing, and parents just happy that the child occupying space. They will come, they will go, but that is the end of it. They don't even go in the bag to find out if they're doing well in school, which probably is another topic we're going to cover. But you know, school's out, so we will look out. So continue, Miss Bobb-Ward.
Yes, we're going well. And for those who joined us late, we have PC Virgil and Sharon who are sharing some very useful information with us. School's out, look out. We mentioned cell phones, so I want to go along that path. Our children love phones and computers and iPads and all kinds of other devices. And there is some danger in having our children glued to these devices, even during the wee hours of the morning while some parents are sleeping. Tell us, Officer Virgil and Sharon, what are some of the dangers associated with having our children unsupervised on social media?
Well, one question I usually would ask a child who's in the possession of the cell phone, I ask them, who does this cell phone belong to? But you know, the first response is that, oh, the cell phone is mine. And I say, sure, think again. Who does this cell phone belongs to? And they think and they think and they think. And I said, okay, let me ask you another question. Who bought the cell phone? Mommy bought the cell phone. So who does the cell phone belongs to? It belongs to mommy. I said, well, now you're talking. You see, what we realize is that parents are not proactive in terms of the usage of the cell phones. They're not as knowledgeable in terms of the use and applications of cell phones. They are not familiar with the terminologies, the language, the lingo of cell phones. So one thing we encourage is that parents need to educate themselves. The children should not know more than you. And it doesn't matter how old or how young the child is, because believe it or not, we're realizing now that devices are raising children. Social media is raising children. The influences of other cultures is influencing our children, and it needs to stop. And remember, we talked about boundaries and the importance of having boundaries. So even when a child has a use of a cell phone, a child should not be permanently in control or determining how the cell phone or the use of the cell phone and manner in which it operates. Because even, for example, when you go to bed, where is the child and where's the cell phone or where's the smart device? A lot of the times we recognize, even in primary schools, that children go into bed at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Even a teacher once told me about a student who posted up status at 3 o'clock in the morning and have school the next morning, right? So parents need to set parameters of operations for the use of the cell phone. And the thing is, each parent knows the child. The age of the child is to be taken into account. The life of the child has to be taken into account. The activities of the child needs to be taken into account. But the final decision has to deal with the parents, because we do know that it's not just about what they're involved into, but what's out there tapping into them. Because we talk about grooming. We haven't even talked about cyberbullying. We haven't talked about the other about social media and the abuse of social media, because all these things, but the fundamental basis resides with the parents, because at the end of the day, the cell phone is yours. A child does not possess property until they reach the age of accountability, which according to the law of Trinidad and Tobago is 18 years old. So they could be 17 and a half, and as of midnight tonight, they become 18 years old. It is your cell phone. And a child can't tell you, oh, the cell phone is mine, and they're not getting it back. It does not exist. Okay? So parents, arm yourself with information, and hopefully at the end of the day, we're going to see positive changes.
Allow me to add,
Yes.
Parents, please monitor what your children look at on social media, because sometimes innocently, even we have animation now, animation porn, and you might think that child watching, well, I know they have the Coco Melon, are looking at the younger ones and the Peppa Pig and all these things, and children look at them, and sometimes they may be looking at a YouTube video, but you remember they just have these little things that coming across, and the children like to take their fingers and tap. And then sometimes it might be something that is inappropriate for your child. So parents, please monitor whatever those children are looking at on the cell phone. And next thing is that sometimes the children might know more than the parent. The parent might not be cyber educated. They don't have that, they're not tech savvy. So they're not, a child at school might be way in advance with that cell phone, primary school. And that child might put up some status, and another child might look at it, they look at the status, and it might be something explicit, sexually explicit. It might even be something like violence, guns and these things, introducing them to gangs and those things. So we as parents, we have to monitor what our children look at on the cell phone, or what they indulge in on the cell phone. Who are they talking to on the cell phone? Because there's a ad on the television with Larry. I'm sure everybody saw Larry, and you're asking who that? Larry. Who Larry? Larry from I forget who Larry, I forget the thing now. But the one that we have with Larry, and this little girl said that she going on the beach. I'm sure PC Virgil, you are aware of that one.
In
right?
addition
So,
to that, it's not just sorry to cut you, Miss Winchester, but I was just going to speak a little bit about that. You see, children now are forming their own WhatsApp groups. There's a group right now, as I mentioned before, it ranges from primary to secondary school called the Shade Room. This is where children of different schools come together in this WhatsApp chat group, and it ranges from violence to sexually explicit to all kinds of things. Even recently, I was treated with a primary school student where the father, by the way, came to the school because he came in a very aggressive manner because the principal would have seized the child's cell phone. And the accusations, or rather the allegations, were that there were a bunch of sexually explicit content on this child's phone in primary school. But the thing is, parents, as we mentioned, there's always a miscommunication between parents and child, because when the child goes home to tell the parents that they mistake the phone, that is the extent of the conversation. And that is why we emphasize on the communication between parents and child, and parents and schools and teachers, etc. So when the father came, he came with only one half of the story. But when his phone was actually retrieved, and I said, well, Daddy, unlock the phone and show it to me now. Because they say, you want to see? Sure, no problem, see the thing. So when he tried to unlock the cell phone, he could not unlock the cell phone. I said, but Daddy, you just told me that is your phone. You purchased it. Unlock the phone. He tried to unlock it. I said, but Daddy, didn't you not install the password? He said he don't understand what is taking place. I said, don't worry, you go figure it out. Bring the child. And when the child was brought in, I handed the father handed the phone over to her, and with one thumb flip, bloops, unlock. Father looked shocked. And I said, no, do it again. And when I showed him what she did, Daddy now had to confront with himself the embarrassment and shame of now being able to recognize that there's more going on in his home than what meets the eye. And I haven't even got it started on the content itself, because it was hundreds and hundreds of group messages and chats and whatnot. But more importantly, because as Ms. Winchester talked about, that children are far more tech savvy than their parents, because this primary school child set her phone in such a way that all her message was programmed to be erased after 24 hours. Under what circumstances that is allowed to happen for a child who talks about everything and does everything? So now,
we're not hearing you, PC Virgil.
Conversation with the, hello? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, yes.
Right. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that this father now has to have a very different conversation going forward, because he now has to be confronted with the reality, or the new reality, that what he thought to be true about his child has now become shattered, and now he has to recognize that there's more going on than what meets the eye. So we have to be aware children should not be left to their own devices. Monitoring is very important. It's not just about throwing an eye just because you see colorful pictures and then sit down and watch what they're watching, know what they're watching, set parental controls. These things do happen, and it's important for us to be aware as to what they're actually doing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add before we go on. We have a lot of virtual perpetrators out there, and some of them would pretend that they are children. So sometimes their WhatsApp status picture might be of a child, but it's an adult. And sometimes they might be talking to the child late in the night, and they say, send me a pic now. So the child might innocently send a picture of themselves. I want you to take your shirt off. Take off your underwear. I want a real pic. Or sometimes, we going real now. Sometimes 11-year-old, 10-year-old is a big man penis that they're sending to that little girl. Or sometimes they might tell them, I just want to see on top. And girl, you're looking real good. And tell them stuff that would make that preteen start thinking, well, I'm big now, and that kind of thing. And even ladies groom the girls. So we can't just look at the men as perpetrators. We have to look at the ladies also. So as parents, be very careful of the virtual perpetrator. And sometimes it might not even be, as PC Virgil says, it might not be a secondary school, it might be at primary school. And tell me, how can an 11-year-old defend themselves when an adult, a 45-year-old man, start telling that child stuff that make them start to feel they're big, start to feel different about their bodies? How can that child defend themselves when he start coming onto her? Sometimes you as an adult woman, a man trying to lie you and you run out of words. Imagine an 11-year-old.
Yeah,
So parents,
your knees start to
monitor
get weak, yes.
yes, monitor your children, monitor what they look at, even the video games. The video game is another thing that we need to pay attention to. One of my friends told me recently that she always buy games for her son. One evening she was in the kitchen and she hearing a man talking. So she know he don't have any man in the house. So she said, who is that? Let's say the person is Virgil. Virgil? But who is Virgil? Virgil sounds like an adult. That was an adult man. So he introduced himself with a child. His status was a child picture. But as he gets into the game now and he start playing with the child, was an adult. And sometimes we have these violent video games that the children start showing, portraying violent behavior. The video game might tell them, kill them, stamp them, stamp them. And our children would be so engaged into those games that they start, the behavior pattern change and they start portraying behavioral, displaying difficult behavior. Let's look at those picked children that we see on social media fighting. There are certain primary school in Trinidad and Tobago. All these young girls know to do is fight. And we need to stop it. We as parents, we need to do something to stop this type of behavior. Parents, I'm begging you tonight, monitor your children. Monitor what they look at. Monitor what they're playing on the video game. Sometimes you sit down there and pretend to be reading a book, but it's the game. They are on the phone. Or sometimes they look in the room and say, I'm studying. Go in the room sometimes and study. Check in with the children. Don't just leave them to their own destruction, because we would pay for it at the end.
Yes, and one thing I will just support what Ms. Winchester is saying is that privacy is a privilege in your house. There's no such thing as privacy in your own home. A child needs permission to close your door, to lock your door, and all these things. And all the slamming door when they're vexed. Remember who's the parent and who's the child. Secondly, when you go to bed, the phone goes with you. Taking into account the age of the child, a parent will decide how flexible he or she would be in terms of their use of cell phone or the uses of their cell phone, right? So you will decide how we're going to be, how that interaction is going to be, but it's always best to err on the side of caution, especially if you want to protect your children. The games, as Ms. Winchester mentioned before, who's the one buying the games? It's the same parents who's buying the games, but what they don't do, they don't read the labels. The labels indicate the age appropriateness of what this game is actually about. Because a child said, Mommy, I want Grand Theft Auto, and you just say, well, this Grand Theft Auto is just a game that's going to play. But when you read the content, you see it's rated M for mature, and it lists what the activities are on the games, and parents need to be aware as to what these children are into, be involved, but also ask questions to them. Because remember, at the end of the day, you want to have or protect the relationship between yourself and the child. The child should be able to trust you. The child should be able to be open with you, not just in terms of who they are as persons, but even as social. Be interested in what they're interested in, and you'll determine how better you're going to parent this child.
Yes, thank
Additionally,
you.
I want to
Before
add
we
one
proceed-
point. Okay, go ahead.
Before we proceed, I saw a
Hmm.
hand earlier. It was done. And I just would like to slice her in for a little bit. If you still remember your point, so that she can
Go
contribute
right
and then
ahead.
we'll come back.
Go
All
right
right?
ahead. Go right ahead.
So Dawn,
Yes, and as you
if
do
you
so, Akisha, also take us through one or two of the comments in the chat.
yes,
Mhm.
sure.
And then we'll take the point. But I want us to move afterwards to the issue of vacationing at friends and relatives and sleepovers and things like that. So PC Virgil and Sharon, prepare for that. Parties and sleepover and meeting people, friends on the mall and things like that. I want us to really delve into those things, because when you go to Trin City during the vacation, sometimes there's nowhere to walk because it's overrun by children. Go ahead, Akisha.
All right. So I will go ahead and then Dawn will come up.
Sure.
So in the chat we have, yes, parents need to monitor the usage and tap into what their kids are involved with. There are too many video games not monitored. Social media is very convincing and deceptive. We have another comment. We as parents must know what the signs and shorthand writing. The signs and shorthand writings. Oh my, educate us. So many parents don't really know about the technology in comparison to parent guardians' ability. Larry from online, I guess that was in to Sharon's point. Parental control is a must. Parents need to be educated as well. They don't know how to communicate. And finally, we have, I always believe that bedrooms are not study rooms. True, but sometimes certain persons, home conditions are kind of the only place to study. All right.
Hence why they don't have locks.
So I could make the point now, right?
Yeah, because I guess by now,
Or somebody, Dawn was
Oh,
supposed to
yes,
make a
Dawn
point.
tried to
Go
speak a
ahead.
while ago.
oh,
Go
good.
ahead, Dawn.
Hi, good night. Good night.
Hi.
My hand went up when Officer Virgil mentioned about the WhatsApp groups. My hand went up because I had a situation like that when my daughter started secondary school. What happened is that she had friends from primary school who went to other schools. And these friends in other schools made friends in those schools. And then they started having these WhatsApp chats with friends. I'm like, so one, I since when my daughter got a phone, she started secondary school. That's when we allowed her to get a phone. But I started monitoring, looking at what was on the phone and, taking little peeps and so. And then I started questioning about these groups, like, why are you in this group and who is in this group and so forth. And then I realized that the groups were children from all different schools in the groups. But what I also discovered is that there were grown-ups in that group, in those groups with the school children. And because the children were from different schools, they were not aware, because remember, each child from the different school didn't know all the children from the other school who were in the chat. And they were not aware that grown-ups were also joining the groups. And I had a particular incident where now the person had a girl's picture up. But when I scrolled down and I was looking at the content of the conversation, I was asking my daughter, I said, why is this person speaking with you? Because do you know this person? Well, give me the name. The name was a unisex name. I said, but I do not like the tone of this conversation. But if this is a girl, the conversation is not sounding right. Because if this is a girl who is talking to you like this, then this conversation is right. Where is the girl from? What school? Whatever. And then I said, no, this is not. So when I started paying more attention to it, I realized, and I started looking at some of the profiles and saw some of the people from the group. I realized that there were grown young men out of school, thug-looking guys, women, grown women. Some of them were the language, the kind of things, the kind of explicit sexual things that they were posting in the group and so I shut down all the groups. I shut down all the groups, and her father and I told her the only people you're allowed to speak to is people from you. And another thing is that they give fictitious names, so they would not call the children, they would not call their friends by their name. So you are unable now to picture. You might see a strange name and like, who is this? Because it doesn't have a proper name. It has a nickname kind of something, you know, ginger ale and this and that. And you cannot pinpoint, okay, who is this? Who is that? So they may be talking to someone that you don't know, but because they are all these fictitious names, you cannot pinpoint who is a real friend, who is a school friend, who is a grown-up who may be talking to them. And so, you know, we had to put on our foot, give everybody a name that we can identify with. Whenever we check your phone, we can know who it is. And those are the things that are happening with our children, with the WhatsApp and the groups and the phones and so forth. So we as parents, we have to be hyper in the night. We have to troll that phone, know who they're speaking to, look at the conversation. And yes, they're speaking codes. So you have to kind of know the codes to exactly the code of the messages so you can know what they're talking about.
You know, Dawn, I thank you so much for that contribution. You had the experience, and I'm glad you shared it so that parents could understand some of the things that happened. Today, when I looked at that video from Orlando, Florida, one of the perpetrators was a 66-year-old retired judge. And of course, he didn't post his real current picture. He posted a picture of him at a younger age, and he was seeking to recruit, to meet little girls. So we really have to be extremely cautious. Take control. Take control. My grandson is now an adult, but I still have the bedroom door key. We lock our bedroom doors at night, but I have the key, and I'm going in when I want to. But let's move on now to talking about some of the things parents do during the vacation time, perhaps to ensure or try to ensure that the children have an awesome vacation, or probably to relieve themselves of some of the burdens. Things like sleepovers and sending them to the mall and having them meet with friends. I remember a young lady asked me when my grandson was quite young, Form 1, why I don't send my grandson to the mall to meet his friends. Said, I will not do that. I will not do that. Sleepovers, visiting persons. Let's talk about it. Meeting on the mall, going to parties, and all of that. What are some of the dangers here, Sharon and PC Virgil?
So I would just like to share a story with you all. I remember this young lady was sharing with me that she was from Tobago and she went to a school in Trinidad. And the classmate after CXC, they came to Tobago and they were in a villa. But there was this particularly young lady that her mother would drop her off to school. I think her mother was a judge. The mother would drop her off to school, pick her up, and have her. She would not socialize much. However, they were in a pool bathing. And she said after she looked around, she recognized there was this boy fondling her, and she was just laughing and just giggling. And then other boys start coming around and just touching and doing what they want. So she's whispered to one of them, how come she's behaving like that? They spike her drink. I know you all know what is spike. So that that means that they pour something in her drink. And she said the child started taking off her clothes and start being suggestive. And the boys had a field day. And she said, I spoke to them and I told them, I said, if you all are friends, you all would never do that to your friends. She said, I got out of the pool and I called my parents to pick me up and I left. So parents, we have to be very careful who our children friends are, who we send them by with sleepover. And for me as a parent, sleepover is a no-no because you don't know who have the tentacles in that house. The tentacles is the hands while the child sleeping under the child night clothes, under the child nightie, in the child's pajama. We have to be very careful about the sleepover. And the sleepover doesn't have to be at the friend's house, you know. The sleepover could be at her uncle's house, her auntie's house. And that same person could be the perpetrator, as PC Virgil talk about the church. Sometimes it could be the pastor or the pastor's children. So we have to be very careful about sleepover. Even bringing children into your home and allowing them to share your child's bedroom or your child's bed. If you could do without doing that, it's a no-no.
You see, again, we have to be very careful. Because one thing I mentioned before is that your children has friends. I think one Ms. Dawn would have mentioned, they know it, or you as a parent would know your child's friends by their alias, but not their names. To me, that is unacceptable. They have a first name and a last name. Do parents know the child's friends? Do you know your child's friends' parents? Do you know the parents directly? Do you interact with them? Because we're talking about having your child leave the safety and security of your own home to then be in the company of other people. But if they are to be in the company of other people, you as a parent should be comfortable leaving them in the care and custody of other adults, or in a shared area, shared space with other children. And the only way for that to happen, or at least for me as an adult and as for you as parents, you're supposed to understand who these people are, know who they are, have a history, so that way that comfort can be alleviated. And that is when the child leaves. In your own home is a whole nother story, because again, everybody was raised differently from the way this child was actually raised. And to invite other people, other children, you're inviting also their history, their upbringing into your safe space. Because Ms. Winchester talked about the bedroom. Why do you need to have a sleepover in the bedroom? You don't need to, because chances are, at least just an option, instead of having it in a bedroom, you have it in the living room. You move the couches to them aside where the TV is, where you as a parent have a centralized space where you can throw an eye depending on the age of the child. Because you know, as the child gets older, you know, the body is going through certain changes. They start feeling themselves. They feel they're too big for certain things. Then that conversation you need to have with the child, depending on what that child is. Because sleeping over, for me, in a villa with 15, 16, and 17-year-olds who riddled with hormones, that's a no-no for me. You understand? Because remember, we're trying to avoid the dangers, especially where one of the topics that I must cover, sexual dangers. When these children are exposed to other children, you're leaving them open to be also exploited. Not just about the adults that we talked about, but even amongst other children. We've seen it happen all the time. Because even within the school systems, even within school itself, when a child goes to the bathroom, the other one follows them in. But you know, everything is laugh and everything is funny, so they don't see the seriousness of it is, see how serious it actually is, and that's in primary school. But children are becoming more and more aware of their bodies as they get older. And the value you place on yourself will determine how a person treats you. So one thing parents need to inculcate in the children is a strong sense of worth and value. Because if you understand who you are, then it's going to make a determination how another person interacts with you, especially as a child gets older.
I just want to add, PC Virgil, a perpetrator don't have a name, a label. Sometimes that we might have those girls or those boys in the living room, and that perpetrator could be the parents. I have known children who, when they become adult, the perpetrator is their friends' parents, who were the first person to start molesting them. So we have to be careful with who we send them by. Because the perpetrator could be somebody, as you said, sitting in church, and the person that said the most amen, and you send your child for that sleepover. And then when a child come back, some of the signs you might see the child behaving shy, or the child behaving, they don't want to talk. They're withdrawn, they don't want to talk. They're dressed, sometimes they're not feeling well. If you could avoid a sleepover, avoid the sleepover. Because sometimes, as we talk about the social media thing, sometimes when they have the sleepover, they're below covers, we don't know what's happening. So parents, if you can avoid the sleepover, please avoid the sleepover, because we don't know who the perpetrators are.
All right, so let me just get to the chat for a little bit, and then we continue. We have, group chat is a way of recruiting. Sleepovers are a no-no for me. Too many predators out there. Another comment. Even holiday camps can be sometimes dangerous. The need to also know that each person should prepare or open his own drink and never leave your drink unattended. Another comment says, we want to be our children's friend, but some of us go too far. Draw the line where the friendship ends and where the discipline gets real. No to some activities. The cell phone must have boundaries and do not be disturbed over their vexation. And the final comment says, I truly like that PC Virgil about knowing, let me get it again. I truly like that though PC Virgil about knowing their self-worth.
I think it means thought, the thought about self-worth. Okay. And also just to add a little bit, there's some tips and tricks you can learn with the cell phones in terms of their use, like cloning the phone. Before you hand the phone over to the child, you can clone the phone. The apps that the child actually has and use on the phone, it doesn't matter if the child does it independently, it automatically gets installed onto your dummy phone. And whatever the child does, or whatever activity a child does, it automatically gets duplicated to the child's, to your phone. So nothing comes as a surprise to you, right? There are parental locks. There are certain apps that they're not allowed to have, because even people don't realize this. Like on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, they don't realize there are age restrictions for a reason. But parents are overly indulgent, and they allow the child's use and free reign of these things without realizing that there are reasons why they have to sign into it, right? Because the exposure to certain things. I think for Instagram, they have two versions. There's a one for under the age of 13, I believe, and there's a one for over 16 years old, or you have to be 16 years and over to sign up, because the platform is very different for the age group, but children is lying, right? But getting back to the sleepover, in terms of self-worth, a child would, depending on the worth of the child, or the self-worth of the child is going to be making decisions. You are literally a sum of decisions that you make. And unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. It can't prevent everything. But what we can do is treat with the knowledge and experience, based on our own knowledge and experience, but also that the information is out there. Let them know that there are support. Let them know that there is safety. Somebody once spoke about not being a child's friend. I personally don't believe in that. Even in certain extent, negotiating with a child. Negotiation is also permission. The same thing with privacy. As your child gets older, the interaction changes. But at the end of the day, you need to remember that you are the parent. And especially speaking as a police officer, even parents can be called to answer questions, and especially in court. They could even be arrested and charged if they provide a means and a mechanism for the delinquency, for the abuse, or anything detrimental in terms of their children. because we're talking about sleepovers. Alcohol. If alcohol is in the presence of your children, if you know you like to drink and you have alcohol out, that is also a crime. You're not even allowed to do that. Public displays of affection in terms of kissing. Kissing amongst your children is a major no-no. Good touch and bad touch. Parents don't talk to the children about their bodies. Learning the correct names, correct, the correct definitions, knowing what areas are off limits, where a person is allowed to touch you, when the person is allowed to touch you, who is allowed to touch you, and the circumstances in which they're allowed to touch you. Children they need to know these things, even when they're talking about sleepovers, because if they don't know who they are in terms of the person, in terms of the personal space, in terms of their bodies, then they're leaving them susceptible to be exploited in so many different ways. And also parents can also be called in to answer questions as well too. Because even though kissing is not even allowed in front of their children, leaving the children unattended for extended periods of time is actually a crime. And even if you think the child is 18, the child is big enough, the child 15 are doing it all the time, or you are taking a risk. Because if a report is made, you can be charged for neglect, for abandonment of your child. So parents, be guided accordingly, because right about now in Trinidad and Tobago, we are not pulling any punches. We are going to arrest parents, we will arrest teachers, and we will arrest children. Because at the age of 7 years and above, a child can be arrested and charged for offenses. I hope you all know that. 7 years and above, a child can be arrested and charged for offenses in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, officer, I was reading a story tonight about an 8-year-old child who was arrested in Alabama for hijacking someone at gunpoint, stealing a car, and going on a chase. It was when the car crashed that the police officers were able to arrest this 8-year-old child. I'm glad you also touched on the point of leaving children at home, because some parents will say, okay, school is closed, I'm working, what am I going to do? Well, that is a question that the parents need to ask themselves, and I want you to weigh in on that a little. Some parents believe as long as I leave them in the safety of my home, and I tell them not to leave, it's okay. You hinted at it a while ago, but I want you to drive it home some more, Officer Virgil and Sharon.
Before we move on, I need to correct something. At the Children's Authority, they discovered that the thing about good touch and bad touch, they no longer use that, because you touching a child and giving a child chocolate, that could be a good feeling. So that could be a good touch. And every time PC Virgil give me a ride in the car, he gives me $100. That does feel good. So that's a good touch. So we no longer have good touch and bad touch. We have okay touch and not okay touch. And an okay touch is okay. I want parents to pay particular attention. It is okay for someone to give that child a handshake, a five, give me a high five, a bounce, a hug. And the hug should be not close up and pulling right up into the child's body. No. It is okay for a parent, sometimes the child might do something good and you can kiss the child on the child's forehead. That's an okay touch. Elbow, that's an okay touch. We also have the not okay touch. It is not okay for someone to kiss a child on their lips, to touch them on their breasts, to touch them on their vagina or their bottom or their penis, or to take their hands and stroll it across the child's body, massaging against the child's body. That is something that we need to teach our children. It is okay for me to give you a hug as a parent, or anybody give you a hug. It is okay for me to give you a kiss on your forehead, a high five, a bounce. But it's not okay for anyone to touch you on your, we would say private part, but we use the name, the penis, the vagina, right? The reason why I would say use the name, if let's say a perpetrator did something to a child and they have to go to court, and that child would say, well, he touched me by my ice cream, or my chocolate, or my piggy. when a child go before the master or the magistrate and you say the piggy, the master would know what you're talking about. So it's okay for us to say, or somebody say the pinky. Tell them the correct name. So in the event of anything, the child knows the correct name. So sometimes the person might say, well, let me lick your chocolate. That is what you calling it, and we encouraging it. So please give those children the correct name and let them know what is okay and what is not okay. So we could move on now. One more thing too is who hug them, who kiss them when you carry them to the daycare, the summer camp, who would bathe them. We have to look at all those things. When they go to the summer camp, you have to let them know it's not okay for one of the children at the camp to come and kiss you or to come and touch you. It's not only for adults, it's also for children. They have to know that their friends, their peers cannot do that to them.
Good. We're really getting some very useful information here this evening.
Yes, and even one thing we do stress on sometimes is that, because I did mention the proper names, we're not teaching children the proper names of their body parts, and even to cover any eventualities. Like one thing we do talk about is like any area that is covered by your clothing, like your shirt, your pants, your dress. If anybody wants to reach beneath those, that is considered a bad touch. You know,
not okay touch.
Not okay. Yes, I stand corrected. Not okay touch.
We no
Sharon,
longer say good and
we'll have to
bad.
get accustomed to it, because I understand what you're saying.
Yes,
a bad touch, a not okay touch, is one that is not acceptable. But you can touch me and it makes me feel good, and I might say it's a good touch.
Yeah, or you could give me some. I could get a reward.
Yes, for that. Yeah. But officer, I said we were going to go on to something. Oh, I wanted you to elaborate on leaving children at home, but you spoke about reaching under the clothes. So let us take a little sidetrack here. Pierre, what about parents dressing children so that everything is exposed, so nobody has to reach under, but everything is there for them to see? Let's talk about that. It's summertime, as we say, and the place is hot, so we feel that it's time to undress our children. Let us deal with that a little.
You see, remember we talk about age appropriateness, right? Even I have a colleague of mine, and he's a father, but he believed that a child, when the child reached a particular age, I can't remember how old the child was. I think the child was like around 5. He, as a father, said to his wife, he is not bathing this child anymore. It is going to be you, in the event of the child needs assistance, just to protect himself, because allegations to surface from, according to what Ms. Sharon said, not so, remind me again, not so good touch,
okay,
touch and not okay.
I have to familiar. Okay and not okay touch.
And not
right.
Okay.
Right? Because we talk about okay and not okay touch. So we're talking about reaching underneath of clothing, and I would have spoken about an experience that I would have treated with and again, primary school. Because what happened is that these 2 students, and I believe it was standard 1 students, if memory serves me correctly, I stand to be corrected. So what happened with these 2 students is that the teacher would have left the room for a bit to like go to the staff room or whatever. And what these children proceeded to do was turn off the lights of the classroom and proceed to chase this other young lady and then corner her and then reach underneath her clothes to attempt to pull down her underwear, while another one was behind her simulating sex. Right? So I just want you to sink that in for a second. So in order for you to understand what we're dealing with, sometimes we need to ask a question: what are these children being exposed to in their homes? So that could be another subject we could probably cover. But as we're talking about reaching underneath of the children, then parents needs to be that role resides with the parents in terms of age appropriateness, because as the child gets older, he or she becomes more independent and capable of dressing his or herself. And if that is the case, then a parent under specific circumstances would intervene or assist if necessary. But when we're talking about okay and not so okay touch, in terms of reaching underneath the clothing, I believe that a line has to be drawn as a child reaches a particular age. And as I mentioned, 5 years old, 6 years old, but remember, depending on the child itself. But remember, that resides with the parent. And also letting the child know that people outside of mommy and daddy, because we give a list of situations or even professions that are permitted by law to touch you, especially underneath your clothing, like doctors, like dentists. And these circumstances can only be in a medical field undergoing a medical evaluation. Because even yesterday, I was talking to some primary school children and I asked them the question, so if I'm a doctor and I came to your school and I say, hey, I'm here to perform free examinations, so come to me, come and meet me in the back room so that I can look and check and see if you're okay. Is that okay? And they're like, no, that's not okay. So the circumstances has to be specific. You know, if a child is sick, or if a child comes and complains to you, you are not a medically trained practitioner. You are not under any circumstances say, okay, well, let me check the area and I'll see if it is okay. No, you need to take your child to get medically examined by a medically trained professional in a medical facility. Sometimes parents get a little bit too overzealous, and that is how they end up before the court. You know, if a 16-year-old child, if a suspected 16-year-old child is having sex, you as a parent are not permitted to say, I will see it for myself, and put the child on the bed and spread open your leg and insert your fingers to check. That is an offense. You too can be arrested and charged and brought before the court. You are not a doctor. And we've had cases where parents would have done that because they would have gotten upset, they were in a rage, etc., etc., and end up in more problems. When you are suspecting of abuse, if there's any suspicion of abuse, you are to convey your child to the station to make a report. The child is then going to be conveyed to the hospital or medical facility to be medically examined under the guidance and instruction of a medical practitioner. And if the parent is the suspect of being abused, if the parent is actually the suspect of being abused, then obviously the parent will not be in the presence, but another person or the children authority would send one of their representatives as a stand-in, the child's advocate or the guardian under those particular circumstances.
I would like to add also, if a child is under 18 and they're going to the doctor, an adult is supposed to be there with them. A doctor is not supposed to examine a child if they are under 18, a minor, no. An adult is supposed to be there with them. And parents, friends, guardians, and family camp leaders, when a child reveals to you or you see something, say something. When a child reveals to you that this person have been abusing me and you keep it to yourself, you did not say anything, and then the child revealed that I told Joan, I told Dr. Ward, but Dr. Ward did not say anything, Dr. Ward would be charged. So camp leaders and parents and elders, there are sometimes some parents, it might be their boyfriend, and they have to protect that boyfriend or their newfound love. And they will try their best to say, she's lying, I know her, all the time she's lying. You could be charged, you would be charged. Once you are aware that this thing is happening, the child revealed to you that this person has been doing something that has been sexually touching me or penetrating me, and you did not report it, you would be charged. You have no must be or maybe. You would be charged. You have to report it to the police and you have to report it to Children's Authority. At Children's Authority, the number is 996 or 800-2014. If you didn't report it and you are found, then you would be charged. So we have to be very careful and be very vigilant with our children.
And to add to that, Ms. Sharon, when a child confides something in you, that does not give you permission to conduct your own investigation.
No.
And ask the child questions and put questions to the child to get more information as to what is taking place. A child comes to you and tells you, then you then take the child to the station to make a report. And I think the law talks about that, as Ms. Sharon would have indicated. I think is, oh, by the way, I will advise all parents to download the Children's Act. It is a useful piece of information legislation because it talks about the things that we're talking about, and especially what we're talking about right now that has to do with mandatory reporting under the circumstances and the situation. I think it has to do with chapter 1128, section 31, 2 and 3, and who these people are and under the circumstances in which a child comes to you and then you now have to take that child to make a report. But as I mentioned before, that does not give you permission to then interrogate the child to find out exactly what the child knows. Okay? And then the relevant authorities are going to take over from there.
All right, so as we are coming to the end of our program, we know that not every issue that we need to look out for will entail other persons being the main contributor to the problem. Sometimes we may have accidents or incidents that may happen. Let's say we leave our children unattended. Do the children know what poisonous substances are? Do they know how to operate, or should they even be using sharp objects? Should they be lighting the stove? How can we provide safety in terms of those settings as well? We going to the beach is vacation, so we go into the beach, we go into rivers, school. How do we provide safety for children in these settings as well?
Okay. In terms of the home, there's a reason why these poisonous substances have labels on it that says keep out of the reach of children. And what parents have failed to do in some instances is they put them within the reach of their children. You know, there are some cases where, you know, the go-to place is underneath the sink, which is for me a very ironic place because the children are closest to the ground. But I personally, and I believe that in order to provide an environment of safety, then these things should be kept in a cabinet that is locked away from children, so it does not be with, so it is not within their reach, right? And especially take into account the age of child, especially. But as we're talking about in terms of lighting the stove, I think that is something. I think we get some feedback here. I think that is something that the parents should utilize at the discretion in terms of the age of the child, because we all would have grown up at some point in time, and the parents would have then taught us how to use a stove, how to wash your clothes, how to iron your clothes, and all these things. But we're talking about the circumstances in which these children are left alone. So it means that for you now to be concerned to a point where a child is going to be or be put in harm's way, that means a child should not be left alone in the first place. And I did mention that a child, according to the law, is recognized at the age, under the age of 18 years old, and they should not be left alone to begin with. So a parent is now assuming the risk, and they're leaving themselves open in the event if something does go wrong to be arrested and charged for either neglect, abuse, abandonment, you know, and on all these things, you know. And I think we didn't have time to talk about corporal punishment, but I think we could leave that for another time, because the law does provide means and mechanisms for that as well too, you know, because we realizing that there are children of this generation that think that licks is a thing of the past. But parents, bear in mind, no, you can administer corporal punishment within reason, as long as the child does not require hospitalization or suffer any kind of injury. You can still administer corporal punishment. But that doesn't mean you pick up a pot spoon or you pick up a big stick or you punch them in the face, or even slap them across the face, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. But that is why I encourage parents to download the Children's Act. I think I may have a copy of it here. If I'm permitted, I think I could forward it in the chat if that's possible.
Is that 4601?
Just let me tell you. Yes, I have 4601 here,
4601.
and Act 12 of 2012.
Okay.
Wait, unless you want to put it in the chat, Miss, unless you have a copy.
No, I don't have a copy with me.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me see. Let me see if I have.
While you're trying to seek out the act, I just want to ask the question that Keisha posed to us there about hazardous liquid and water. Children, especially small children, are attracted to water. When you have containers with water, cover those containers, cover the buckets, the barrel, the tank, the pools. That pool might be an inflatable pool. Supervise those children while they are bathing. And after bathing, deflate the pool or remove the pool, keep it out of that area. Hazardous material, keep it away. As you said, put it in a locked place where the children cannot reach. Because sometimes a child might see something in a bottle. They don't know what is in the bottle, but they know at their age, it's in the bottle, I should drink it. And then if you as a parent go to the hospital and telling the doctors that Jack just had some pitch oil, then the Children's Authority would come in, and then the police would come in, and you would have a lot of explaining to do. So to prevent all of this, parents, be vigilant. Put those things away, all hazardous liquid, material, sharp objects. I think I saw in the news yesterday or sometime where this little child was cutting coconut or something, and he fell on the knife and he lost his life. Parents, be very careful during this holiday time. That is the time where you just notice a lot of fires. Put away the matches. Put away the stove. Let them don't know if you have to unplug the gas tap. Unplug it just for the safety of your child. Because sometimes that child might take that matches and go in their bedroom and lighting under the bed, and poor you don't know. So parents, let's be vigilant. Let's cover up those water tanks. Careful with the pool. If the child, if you go into the river, keep an ice, be in the water, because it's a little bit of water to drown that child. If they are in the water, stay in the water. If they're on the beach, current could pull those children or pull that child. Stay where you can monitor the sea bathing. That's what I want to talk about with as the question that Keisha just posed to us.
And as I mentioned earlier, parents, you have to be very vigilant, because if it is determined that you have provided a means and a mechanisms where a child may be injured or come under some kind of or abuse of any kind, you too can be forced to ask questions or caused to ask questions, and may result in you being arrested and also charged as well too. So as Ms. Winchester said, be sober, be vigilant, take nothing for granted, be proactive in your parenting, because in order for you to have successful children, you first have to be a successful adult / parent. And you have to decide that, remember, children didn't just ask to come here. It was a corporate act that would have caused them to be born to begin with. And once they are here, we have a duty and a responsibility to them. And the reason why the unit was formed to begin with, because we have seen and we would have experienced that parents are not taking their active roles and throwing caution to the wind. And these poor teachers and educators have to now resort to parenting their children. But we can take it back. There's a quote that says, culture was created by people and it can be changed by people. So we have to be the change that we want to see, especially in our children. We can't expect them to do and be successful unless we are successful parents and successful adults first.
Tonight, I also want to admonish parents and guardians. I'm encouraging you to use physical form of discipline to reduce incidents of physical abuse. Now we have many alternative measures of discipline. We could sit and talk to the child, withhold something from them, especially the teenagers. You try taking away their cell phone from them, and then you'll see a difference. So we could withhold things, we can send them to their rooms, we can have a conversation. Why did you do that? And this is not appropriate. Long time, your parents used to beat you, and I tell you, don't do that. And why you, and you're getting this whole day. I remember speaking to a parent, and the parent said to me, it was an elderly guy, I am a Christian and I obey the Bible, and the Bible said, spare the rod and spoil the child. So if my 14-year-old, my 18-year-old want to step out of the bunk, I am going to slap him down and he would get it in his face. We have to be careful what type of behavior we are teaching our children. We are teaching them that it's okay. For, like, the child might do something and you want to slap your daughter in your face. You know, you're teaching your daughter that it's okay for a man to slap you. And mommy, now, you might want to slap your son. It's okay for his girlfriend or his wife to slap you in the face. So we have to be careful with the method of discipline that we use with our children. If we could avoid the physical abuse, the physical discipline, it is good, because it doesn't really, I used to get plenty because I was a miserable child. And trust me, it didn't do much to me. I could tell you, talk to me and tell me this is thing. And I would tell you all, I was guilty of beating. I loved to beat when I was a parent. Then after I got educated and I learned that there are several methods of disciplining children, and I use them, and they were very effective with my children. Sometimes they would say, Mommy, it was a long time. They used to have the police and children's authority intervening. And me, I never used to cut their skin also, but I used to beat. So I'm saying tonight is that let us be careful with using physical punishment on our children, disciplining them in a physical way. Let us try to use non-physical form of discipline. Let us sit down and have conversation with our children. Let us send them to their rooms. Take away this. Sometimes you wait until they're fully dressed and you said, you know what? I'm not going to send you to that party tonight. I'm not going to send you with your friends tonight. You're not going to go anywhere. So I'm just admonishing, try using an alternative measure instead of that physical form of discipline.
And I definitely agree with what Ms. Winchester is saying. You know, and think sometimes parents confuse punishment and discipline. You know, punishment is usually to make the parents feel better, to satisfy their own emotions. But discipline has to do with the understanding of where the child would have gone wrong and the manner in which it is that child is guided back into the path of what is right. And as Ms. Winchester indicated, there are ways and means to go about doing that without always having to resort. In fact, corporal punishment should never be the first resort.
True.
Never be the first resort. But I am also a man of the Bible, and I do believe in time and place for everything. But even if that is the case, it is not the be-all, end-all to satisfy or to create an atmosphere, an environment of discipline. Because a child, first of all, needs to understand where they went wrong before they make any better decisions. And a lot of the times, the only thing they understand is licks, but not the act itself. And by that token, you end up confusing the child, or worse yet, to put the child on a worse path. Because as she would have indicated, you're teaching the child that hitting is okay. You're teaching the child that it is okay for other people to hit you. And unfortunately, you may even produce the same monsters that you try to avoid. So we have to be very, very careful, because even the Bible talks about the rod of correction. The rod of correction is not a literal rod, but the part in which discipline is structured in order to put this child back on the path of correctness. It's about rehabilitation. It's about reconciliation. It's about healing. It's about understanding. It's about conversations. Talk with your children. Don't talk at your children. Don't talk down to your children. remember, they are also a product of the environment that they're in. So where a child is a direct result of how they are parented.
I agree. I endorse that tonight. I endorse that. And I just want to say to parents, teach your children that it's okay to say no to unwanted hugs, unwanted kisses. You know, sometimes you say, kiss uncle goodbye, and the poor child don't want to kiss uncle. Leave that child alone. Sometimes the child might not be telling you what else has happened. So it is okay for your child to say no. And if your child don't want to kiss anybody, it's okay for the child to refuse unwanted affection from other family members.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
PC Virgil and Sharon, this has been a very rich and empowering session, and really, I am hoping that everyone who is listening will take on board what was said. I just wanted to add just one topic, an additional topic here this evening. Now, an issue, I should say. Sometimes you see parents doing all that you said, keeping their children under their control. They have to go on vacation. They have their children with them. They take them out to restaurants. The children want to go to the mall. The parents would accompany them. But I have noticed at the mall, at airports, in restaurants, a child wants to use the washroom and the parent sends the child. Talk to that a little for me, PC Virgin.
A child should always be under the supervision of their parent, especially young children, because those areas are notorious for where perpetrators, predators, opportunists tend to lurk. And by looking, doesn't mean they may physically attack a child or physically try to lure a child away, but just their very presence in terms of they're going to the bathrooms and they're using the restrooms. You know, it's an opportunity for them to be groomed. In fact, even taking a personal experience, you know, I used to talk to my friends. A friend of mine, she had a young son at that point in time, and I told her about the habit that she has of always letting his child walk behind her. I spoke to her on several occasions. A child should always be in front of you, within your sight at all times. And what she did is that she didn't take me seriously then. But I said, okay. So we were at the mall at this point in time, the same mall scenario that you mentioned before. And she let the child walk behind her, and just as easily as it is, I just took the child by the hand and I just lured the child away. And I took him away and hid it in a certain area away from the mother and just waited for her to turn around to see what happened. And then lo and behold, when she did realize that the child was missing and she tried to compose herself to not be into a panic, eventually panic started to set in. And then when I saw her eyes getting a little bit glassy and she about to fall on the ground and started crying, bawl out and whatnot, I let her know that I am right here. He's right here. He is safe. It is that easy. It is that easy. Because when we think that they know, because remember, we talk about even the people that's within the circle of your own family can also be predators. Because the child knows me. The child accustomed to seeing me around, and all that person is waiting is for an opportunity. Even when you're taking the child to the restroom, I encourage parents to go with them. Don't send the child, don't even stand outside the door. You know, don't stand outside the door of the restroom and send the child in. You go in the restroom with the child. Make sure if you want to stay outside the stall where the child is using the stall, then so be it. And be there when they come out. I've seen time and time again, and it doesn't matter the gender of the child, especially if it's a young child you're talking about. You know, but as the child gets older, they can use the restroom by themselves, but you know the same foundations that we established earlier about safe space, your personal space, how to interact with people. All these things will come into play as his child gets older. But you're talking about young children, parents sending their young children into the restrooms. And I've seen it even happen in church, where parents are sitting uncomfortable in the pews. The child tells the parent, "Mom, I want to go and use the toilet." And they said, "Okay, go ahead." And they send the child off. But what I'm saying is that be in the room with the child. It doesn't matter if you're a mother and you have a son, take your son into the female restroom with you.
Yes.
Take your son into the female restroom with you. If you're a father and you have a daughter, take your daughter into the restroom with you, and make sure that they use the restroom and walk them out with you. Do not, under any circumstances, allow your child to go and use the restroom, especially these young children, by themselves.
Thank you so much. My granddaughter, 7-year-old, complained to me today. You know, I wanted to go to the washroom and Daddy took me into the male washroom. I said, that's what he's supposed to do. He's not supposed to send you off to the
course.
washroom.
No.
Yes.
No. That's a definite no. And I think sometimes too, even as fathers, you know, we want to sometimes defer because we have a girl child. I strongly disagree with that position. I think it's time now more than ever before. You need to have a more active male parental role in our young daughters' lives, because these are the examples that they are drawing from. The way a man treats his mother, his woman, is the way a daughter should learn how a male is to interact with her. And that safe space, those boundaries, the do's and the don'ts of okay and not okay touch, work in progress, right? The okay and not so okay touch. All these things come to play, especially later in this child's life, which is why it's important for them to build the foundation now. Yes. Our children. We are for the heels of COVID in terms of the behavior and the attitude in relation to how they interact with each other. But it is because of things like this, platforms like this, conversations like this, we can definitely cause a dent going forward. And so far we have seen positives. So I always encourage those, don't just say thanks, put it in writing, talk to our seniors, let them know the kind of work that we're doing and the impact it's having, because it does help out a lot, especially going forward in a new and upcoming school term.
All right. So to PC Vigil, Miss Winchester, we want to thank you both for being our guest speakers this evening. You have given us a lot to think about, a lot of information, some of which we did not know and did not consider before. And so we really want to thank you for taking your time to be with us this evening and to sharing with us a little bit more on how we should parent during this time, especially during this vacation time with our children. We have come to the end of our program. We want to thank everyone who would have participated and our guest speakers for this evening for being a part of our program. Yes, indeed, it was a fantastic session, a very informative session as well. Remember that we are on this very link every Wednesday evening from 9 p.m. So you can join with us every Wednesday where we speak about different topics, about different things. So feel free to do so. You can find a recording of this program and every other program we would have done so far. You can find it on Dr. Ward's YouTube channel and Facebook page. So just go there and click on the links on whichever recording you would like to view, because we always record the recordings. As we come to a close, I saw in the chat Mr. Mapp, and I am asking you kindly to pray with us as we close this evening.
Right, sure.
Thank you.
Pleasant night, everybody, and thank you so much to the presenters. It was fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Great, great stuff.
Yeah.
May God's blessings be upon you all as well. Shall we pray? Father in heaven, we come before your presence tonight, just acknowledging the fact that we are living in a very sinful world. We are living in a world that has really become very insensitive to children, and children have become so much more vulnerable in these times. And even as the school holidays have begun, and we have to deal with children at home, we have to interact with them, we have to find things for them to do. We have to somehow do this even as we face our own employment. We really needed wisdom tonight. And we had two fantastic presenters who shared with us and dialogued with us and gave us so much wisdom that we are so grateful. We want to ask you, God, to bless them in a very special way. God, they made this sacrifice to be here with us and to share with us their experience, their knowledge, their tips, and we are grateful. So God bless them and really, really enlarge in their territory where you see the need for such blessings. Father, tonight we want to pray a special prayer for our children. Father, it's not easy. And Lord, we just claim your protection. Your word says no weapons formed against your children shall prosper. So God, we claim such a protection for our children that you will intervene in their lives, even where they may be exposed, things they might have touched, things they might have seen. Father, we pray even that you break even bonds that need to be broken, even things that they might have seen that, Father, you make it plain to us as parents so that we can help them, and we can provide this support for them, and we can help them to become all that you would have them become. So Lord, save our children. Father, for us as parents, we want to ask you, God, for wisdom, for the will to do what it needs to be done, the will to say no, the will to acknowledge that what belongs to us as parents, the will to set the boundaries, the will to know the passwords, the will to stop what needs to be stopped, the will to create those walls that need to be set up, the will to say no and not feel guilty. Help us, God, to be better parents, to be stronger parents, to be parents that are clear in terms of what is required to be done for your honor and for your glory. And finally, God, I thank you for this program, this session, and all those who arranged for it, the Hope and Action Network and all those connected. I pray, God, that you continue to bless these efforts so that it will be expanded and that the dialogue that is shared here will truly redound to benefit for others, and growth will take place, and even people will come to see Jesus, who really, Lord, is the only source of hope, the only source of help, the only source of healing. So God, thank you for this session tonight. And even as we rest, even as we maybe, for some who may be on shift and working, whatever the task, whatever the duty, whatever the action, we pray your blessings, we pray for your peace, that you just come close to us and let your will be done. Bless our night and help it to be safe and even productive, even means good dreams. Bless us, we pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Amen.
So thank you again, Ms. Bob, for having me. Everyone have a blessed night.
Thank you for coming, Virgil.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks to
Sharon.
everyone. Thanks to everyone. And remember, child protection is everybody.
If everybody needs to contact us, Miss, yes.
If you see something, say something. Child protection is everybody's business. So do have a pleasant night and look forward to joining on Wednesday night next week. Pleasant night.
Okay, please give us your contact, PC Virgil.
Right.
Your unit.
I was saying, oh yes, the Special Victims Department, and the contact number is 639-8246 or 639 1812.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Ms. Bob, we will be in touch. Do have an awesome night,
Certainly.
everyone. All right.
So much.
Okay.
Have a good night, everybody.